Once upon a time in the drama-filled land of ancient Greece, Athens and Sparta decided that living peacefully was just too boring. So they plunged into an epic war, Athens' super-elite navy versus Sparta's legendary infantry. The plot was even more intense than a Hollywood action movie. Before the fight began, Athens made a big splash on the world stage by defeating the Persian army at the Battle of Marathon. And no, it had nothing to do with running. A decade later, Persia returned with an even larger force, only to face 300 too cool for school Spartan warriors at Thermopylae, who fought to their last breath in what could easily be an epic movie scene. Following that, Athens' navy boldly sang the No Fear anthem and smashed the Persian fleet at Salamis. And finally, Persia's land forces didn't fare any better as they were crushed at Plataea, forcing them to pack up and retreat home, from besties to frenemies. After their glorious victories, Athens and Sparta became besties, forming an anti-Persia club. But it wasn't long before jealousy set in. Hey, who's more popular here? Athens went big, forming the Delian League, a coalition of city-states and colonies, and slowly turning the alliance into its personal empire. They built a dazzling city that left all of Hellenistic Greece in awe. 300 triremes, warships manned by professional sailors more numerous than Zeus's fan club. Drama officially begins. While Athens was busy blinging itself up, Sparta sat back, grinding its teeth. Just you wait. The drama peaked when Athens began encroaching on Corinth's trade. Corinth, once the Lord of the Seas. Thus began the First Peloponnesian War, a 15-year-long saga full of trickery and cunning moves. Although Sparta scored a small victory on land, Athens shrugged it off and built massive walls connecting the city to the port of Piraeus, ensuring their supply chain stayed intact even during a siege. Peace was just an empty promise. Athens and Sparta signed a so-called 30-year peace, but in reality it lasted only a few years. More like, let's call it peace for now. While Athens was still busy flaunting its wealth, Corinth, Sparta's ally, whispered in Sparta's ear, "You're just gonna let Athens run wild like that?" Sparta, alongside its Peloponnesian League allies, declared war on Athens in 431 BCE. The match kicks off with bizarre strategies. The opening phase of the Second Peloponnesian War was like guerrilla warfare. Sparta played their usual card, torching the countryside around Athens, hoping to provoke the citizens into open battle. But no, Athens had predicted this move and stuck to one strategy: stay home and order takeout. Grain shipments from Egypt and far-flung colonies kept the city well-fed. Meanwhile, Athens hit back by setting up a blockade around the Peloponnesian Peninsula, disrupting Sparta's trade routes and launching night raids on Sparta's allies. This plan was masterminded by Pericles, Athens' legendary statesman, whose strategic brilliance earned him universal respect. Plot twist: the invisible enemy appears. The plan seemed flawless, but no one foresaw the mystery villain, the plague. Among the silent grain ships entering Athens came an uninvited guest, the seeds of a plague. As rural refugees crammed inside Athens' walls, the disease spread like wildfire through a gossip-ridden marketplace. Despite initially holding firm under Pericles' inspiring leadership, the plague worsened the situation drastically. Tragically, even hero Pericles and his two sons succumbed to the disease. With an estimated death toll of 1/4 of the population, panic set in, and even mercenaries fled the city. Irony is nobody's friend. Ironically, as Athens plunged into crisis, their self-imposed blockade ended up shielding Sparta from the plague. It was like, wait, did we just protect them? Despite the catastrophe, Athens refused to give up. The war entered a more dramatic phase, and if you thought this was the climax, think again. There were even more twists ahead. Changing tactics, full-on offense. After weathering the storm of the plague, Athens switched to a bolder strategy, ramping up raids and establishing fortified outposts along the Peloponnesian coast. They cleverly encouraged Sparta's helots, slaves who outnumbered their Spartan masters 10-1, to flee to these outposts, forcing Sparta to defend their homeland. But peace, dubbed the 50-year Peace of Nicias, was short-lived, as both sides resumed their meddling almost immediately. Syracuse fiasco, a risky gamble or suicide mission? In 415 BCE, Athens launched an ambitious campaign to conquer Syracuse, a wealthy city-state in Sicily, aiming to dominate Mediterranean trade. Leading the expedition was Alcibiades, a young, ambitious politician hungry for glory. But things went south fast. The expedition turned into a disaster, with Athens losing over 10,000 hoplites and two-thirds of its fleet. Ships could be rebuilt, but the 30,000 professional oarsmen, irreplaceable. Betrayal, escaping slaves, and Sparta's rise. Athens spiraled further into crisis. Sparta freed 20,000 Athenian slaves working in its silver mines, shaking Athens' economy. Athens raised tributes from its colonies to compensate, but this only fueled rebellions in regions like Ionia, marking the final chapter of the war. Meanwhile, Alcibiades, fearing retribution for his failure, switched sides and joined Sparta. At this point, Sparta began receiving massive financial support from none other than Persia, yes, their former enemy, as Persia saw Athens as the bigger threat. With Persian money, Sparta built a formidable fleet, and with Corinth's help, dealt a crushing blow to Athens at the Battle of Aegospotami. Now navyless, Athens was besieged and forced to surrender. The end in fate's whisper. Sparta rose as the dominant power in Greece, but their victory was short-lived. Their most precious resource, Spartan warriors, had dwindled to unsustainable levels, making it impossible to maintain an empire. In the chaos that followed the war, Philip II of Macedon, father of Alexander the Great, seized the opportunity to conquer the weakened Greek city-states, paving the way for a new chapter of history with Macedonia's shining glory. History's lesson? Don't mess with Persia and always get pandemic insurance.